Good morning, folks. Hope you're well. Hope you're safe. Not a great deal to report. I'm sure those of you who watched the announcement yesterday were hoping for a little bit more clarity, as was I, and probably the rest of the country. In terms of the key messages from education and from us is that we are still closed and obviously still open for the key worker families. I think that's still going ahead. And I think the other key message for me was that early years, year 1 and year 6, may, and that was very much a may on a conditional plan based on the infection factor, could potentially be coming back after half term. Now, because it was so vague, the message, I'm sure you felt as well, from your point of view, how confident are you as parents sending your children back to school? But equally, we are concerned around the guidelines that will come with in terms of supporting that transition back into school. That, again, hasn't been detailed enough for us. We cannot ascertain or start to put in plans in place at all until we've heard or once we've seen the release of this 50-page document. And even when that's released, which we believe is around this afternoon or before 3 o'clock, whether or not this is going to be going ahead in terms of strict, rigorous and safe guidelines for the pupils, parents and teachers to adhere to for transition back in school for those reception year 1 and year 6 children. Early indications and early things I've already spoken to the leaders of the school about this morning is having to think about the geography and the physical element of that to make sure that your children are safe if we do open after half term on June the 1st. And I think for us, we would have to obviously separate the children into a variety of different classes to keep them obviously within the social distancing guidelines. And that's going to be tough. And you may have heard on the radio this morning, people are worried about sending children in because they want to make sure schools have got the necessary guidelines and risk assessments to make sure that your children are safe in school. Also, I think I gleaned from what Boris said last night, other than this is all conditional, is it's a phase entry. Now, I don't know what he means by that. It could mean a number of things, whether we have groups of children in across the 5 days, and if that means having maybe 4 or 5 children from each of these classes across the week, and then we'll obviously staff the amount of children. It could be a morning and afternoon sessions, we don't know. He might say, or his colleagues might be asking us to come up with a plan ourselves. We don't know if that's the case. I only say that because I'll be surprised if there's anything in this document that really gets to the nitty-gritty of what that looks like on the shop floor in the school. But as like you, I'm concerned if this does happen, and the way it happens in terms of how that phase will look like is, do we have the essential protective equipment and hygiene resources to be able to make sure the children are safe throughout the day? So very, very vague, maybe deliberately so. But until we've heard a little bit more from local government and central government about what's contained in this publication this afternoon, there's not much more we can really do apart from continue to support the key worker families. Now, I'm very aware that parents at home or parents who might be listening want to go back to work, maybe in an industry where they are able to go back to work. And obviously that's something you need to talk to us about. If you are a key worker and you're going back to work, then you'll need to obviously do what you normally do, which is contact me, and we'll support you as those key workers. The difficult thing for you is if you're both at home and one of you is not a key worker, then the expectation is that the children still remain at home. So that's I suppose that's a bit difficult. particularly with the fact that childcare is still only schools and we can't use extended family yet, albeit we can go out and do a bit more exercise. But that's kind of what we're at today. If you've got any questions, you know the live chat's there if you want to send anything through. I did have one question regarding social distancing in school, if it does happen and what that looks like. As I said, I suppose we're quite fortunate in a way that we have quite a big site, and we'll definitely use the site in order to isolate groups of children when they come back in. This will all be signposted to support you coming up Craven Drive or from the library or from the Golden Vale path at the back, just so that you're aware what that looks like in terms of social distancing. Again, I need a bit more clarity from local government and obviously showering down from central government what that will look like. All I would say is that any messages that will be received, I'm hoping will be consistent across the county, across the country. So whatever we're doing is the same as what St Mary's and the infants and the juniors up in Churchdown will be doing as well. That's really, really essential. So you feel reassured when the children come to school. The message is clear. The message is about keeping your children safe. And I'm not going to sit here and give you necessarily my opinions on it, because we've all got an opinion. And for me, is safety. The safety for your children, safety for the staff. And I'm happy to say we still have staff that are shielding, much like I'm sure you're in some circumstances where some of your family members may well be as well. So it's a bit in limbo, aren't we? We're kind of in between a rock and a hard place. And until we get a bit more clarification on what was mentioned last night, then hopefully we'll be able to start putting plans in place. But we still have 3 weeks for the potential transition back into school. Hopefully the advice and guidance this afternoon will give us more clarity so we can start organising things. And I understand you must be frustrated by what's been said yesterday, as we are, all of us are. But again, let's hope the next 48 hours gives a bit more of an insight in how we can start to move forward for you all, so you understand and you feel reassured that yes, those year groups can go back to school and this is what it will look like. We do need a blueprint. We need to work from this blueprint, and then we can bespoke it to part and manner. And as always, as soon as I hear anything new, and it might well be we do another one of these forums before Friday, but I'll let you know. And please send me questions via Dojo, anything beforehand, any concerns that you have. But as soon as we hear anything, I'm hoping that I'll be able to give you something a bit more clearer to consider. But yes, so as it stands, we're still open for the key worker families, and obviously if your situation or circumstances change and that you both need to go back to work, or you're back to work because of that's what your role is, then please contact me and we're obviously here to support you. But yes, so I hope you're all well. And if there are, no one sent me anything yet. Just to kind of reinforce the communication, we are talking all the time at school, teachers, the leadership team and the governors. We're all communicating one another about the situation, about what we're going to do about it. But we've obviously come to that big fence that we can't quite get over yet. We just need some more information to give you more accurate answers. So yes, it's a case of just waiting now. Yes, Ms. Hurl, I did see your dojo about social distancing children. And as I said, I think I've alluded to that as best as I can with very little information I have. But like I said, paramount is your children's safety. And that will be what we'll be considering first before we start putting any physical plans in place for the children to come to school, what that might look like for those year groups. But as soon as we do know, in terms of how we communicate, that will be with you as soon as it can be feasibly possible to support you in any, or to support with any concerns that you might have, and just to reassure you. Absolutely, Mr. Wright. We're obviously led by those that will tell us to open as soon as we've been given the green light and there's a blueprint to follow. Yes, it obviously we'll be determined to make sure we got everything in place to start school after half term. And I just want to add this. I think before we start running before we can walk, things can change in 3 weeks, and I don't want to get too carried away of saying, "Oh, it'll be great to see you off on June the 1st," when I think if they may reconsider things, the R indicator may tell us something new, and they will quite quickly put a stop to any kind of schools if there's any issues with that. But absolutely, as soon as we know, and it's definitely going to happen, absolutely, we will be using our Emerald Gem power to do all we can to make sure the children are going to come to school, they're going to be safe, they're going to get lessons as best as we can to serve the curriculum that we need to serve for the children. And yes, and it'll be great to see them, but as long as it's a place where they feel safe. And I would add, I suppose, I did say I wouldn't necessarily give my opinion, but I do feel that it will be a very alien place, particularly for children of 4, 5, and 6. Ages 4, 5, and 6, maybe the Year 6 children will be able to deal with it a bit better. But we'll do all we can to make sure it's as comfortable for them as possible, because school will not be at the same place as it was when it closed on March the 20th for them. So we need to make sure that they are comfortable. Obviously, they'll see the familiar faces, but it will have a different outlook due to those social distancing guidelines, which for me is a little harsh for the youngsters to accept. And the things that we are putting in place, there's more structure over the next 2 or 3 weeks for the key worker children, more kind of bite-sized lessons and teaching going on, and we're doing that. And we want to make sure if that does feed into after half term, that continues for those children as best as they can engage with that, bearing in mind it'll be a very unfamiliar environment in terms of the setup, but hopefully they'll feel reassured with the teachers, etc. So let's just wait and see. Okay. I think that's what we've got for now. Is there anything else, folks? Yes, and agreed. Normality would be good. A new normal. I think a new normal will be working in a very different way. And children, as we well know, you've been with them now full time, some of you, for a vast majority of the last 6 weeks. Children need routine as best as they can. And particularly when they're in school, they enjoy that. It's a safety net for them. And for me, making sure we're looking after their mental health and well-being is key. And I think they'll be excited about coming back to school, if that's the case. And we just have to make sure that we give them the right routines to be able to get used to this new normal, if that's what actually happens in June. I suppose just to reinforce, thank you for continuing with the home learning. I'm sure you're getting through it, and it seems to be well, really accepted in terms of the BBC Biteside, and there's lots of things that people are using. And again, just to reassure you that if you don't complete everything, it's fine, because we know it's not ideal for the children. And particularly if I give you an example with my son, I think over the last couple of days, the length of time now is starting to pay, I think, for the younger children. And they're realizing that this new normal is becoming difficult to adapt to, and they are desperately seeking to see their friends. And for me, that's the tough thing at the moment, is to kind of just keep reminding the children that the reason what we're doing is they're supporting everybody. And as soon as we've got clarity and getting them back into school, it will be great to see them. Yes, yeah, so Noah's mum from Green Class, yeah, we just talked about that. We don't quite know what the structure or the makeup of a phased return to school would look like yet. I suppose we could speculate, like you just suggested, a few hours a day. It could be morning sessions, afternoon sessions. All I have said and just reiterated is that it will be paramount for us to keep safety as at the top of the list, and making sure that children, when they're in school, are still adhering as best we can to adhere to the social distancing guidelines, have a curriculum that is able for the children to engage with, to look after the mental health well-being. But at the moment, until we've got that publication through about what that should look like or what we're supposed to be following, then we can't really give a clear answer to that yet. Well, that's a really good question, because I'm sure it says here, is it compulsory to send children back if schools reopen? The local authority are going to have to give us some guidance on attendance and authorising children, whether parents feel, do you know what, I'm not happy about sending my children back to school at the moment. I know they're open, but I still don't feel confident that it's a safe place for them to be. And you're within your own right to not send them for that reason. What that will look in terms of the consequences of that, I don't know. I'm hoping they're going to be incredibly lax for that and just say, well, that makes sense. I mean, in all seriousness, in my personal view, which I shouldn't really be given, is I think it would have just been easier just to say, let's just go for September, and then you wouldn't have to worry too much. But it has opened up a can of worms for everybody. And I am completely appreciating where you're coming from and how concerned you might be about sending children to school if it's not safe. And all I can do is just reassure you that we'll do the best we can to make sure that it is safe for the children, but completely understand that that might not sit with you very well at the moment, the way things are so unclear and vague. So compulsory, I'd imagine it would be, but there needs to be some type of contingency there or fallback plan for parents, or for us to say, we understand why you're not sending them in. Yeah. Yeah, I think social distance has probably already created its own gem power, and I suppose answers on a postcard for the name of that gem, perhaps. Okay. Yeah, I shouldn't really be giving my honesty, but I think you know who I am. I normally just say it as it is. But I was speaking, I was hearing another head teacher this morning, and he was a secondary school head teacher and doesn't really envy the position that primary schools are in. And so it is a tough place to be. And I suppose I'm honestly really concerned about the young children and how that will look. The reason why I think they've looked at reception in year 1 and year 6 for the obvious reasons about moving to the next phase of learning. But Amanda Spielman, who is the chief Ofsted inspector, head of Ofsted, said that a number of weeks ago that they were the most important children to go back, which is interesting because this is obviously before lots of things happened. So whether the government are just still hanging on those threads from her, I don't know. I suppose if I was supporting the notion of these children coming back, those specific year groups, it would be about the fact they've potentially going to miss up to a third of their schooling, which is so difficult when they've spent 60% of time in school learning behavioural routines and other routines within the school, learning key phonics and the kind of key essence of the early years curriculum. And to try and reteach that after an absence is really tough, albeit I know people are doing their best at home. And I just feel perhaps maybe that's the reason. Whether it's the right one, I wouldn't advocate either way. I just think perhaps safety for me outweighs perhaps rushing the children back because they're a specific year group. And I think, like I said, year 1 and reception going back is probably causing parents more of a dilemma, and being in that predicament must be hard. And I empathise with you for that. Okay. And as always, if you want to send me any questions individually about your families, please do so. I'm not sure if any of the children watched Boris last night. I'd imagine they would have done, or you may have summarised it this morning with them. But all I would say is just please try and speak to the children with an element of caution that it might happen after half term. We don't know for certain, because I wouldn't want them to get their hopes up and think, oh, they can go back and see their teachers, because we don't know exactly how it's going to look. And it may all change in 3 weeks. So I think we need to tread carefully with the children, and I suppose not raising their hopes too much yet. And I'll speak to them about it on Friday in the assembly, just to go over what that might look like. And as I said, there may be more information before the Friday's assembly. Okay, so I really do appreciate you popping by. So we've got 71 of you in today. That's 71 sign-ins. So I know some people might watch it a bit later, but is there anything else, folks? Okay. Right, my understanding is 2 p.m. is when this publication is going to be released. So please, there'll be some thread somewhere, a link that you might receive. And please, if you do see it, give it a read, or the elements that apply to us. And we'll go from there. And no doubt, when I speak to the leaders and governors tonight, that'll be a big part of what we discuss. Yes, thank you, Mr. Wright. It's a good question. Of course, teachers love to see the children. And I'm happy to say that, well, I think I mentioned at the beginning, I can't remember if I did, we've got some teachers that are still shielding until the mid part of June. So I've got to give that some consideration, particularly if the year groups are coming back. Our reception year one, I have to make sure that the children feel happy and comfortable with the faces they're going to see. And I suppose from a federation point of view, this is why it's been great having teachers from both schools mixing with each other and seeing all the rest of the children. So when they do see if, for instance, it's not their normal teacher because for whatever reason, at least they'll know who the teacher is. And I think that's a positive for the children, because I think for the last 2 years, I feel like we've mixed really well, and I think that's supported not only the teachers but the well-being of all the pupils as well. I think understandably there's going to be an element of anxiety from pupils, parents and teachers, and I think we all just want a clear message, and we just want a message that is consistent, and I think we need a message that isn't going to change too greatly. So I think, which I suppose I can understand why, they've taken a very gradual approach to this message, because I think a lot of things pivot on children going back to school in terms of people going back to their jobs and the economy being fueled again. So I think this is a very big decision, and I understand probably the gradual approach to it, but that doesn't nonetheless stop us from feeling a bit frustrated and uncertain what that might look like. Okay. Okay, folks. Thanks ever so much for stopping by, and look out for that publication. And I believe Boris is going live at 3:30 in the House of Commons if you're going to watch that. Think about fish fingers. You might have to elaborate there a little bit. Is this the right? You're in the right group. Hang on, have I missed a thread? Fish fingers. I mean, I like a fish finger sandwich every now and then, but yeah. Right. Okay. Enjoy the rest of the day. At least it's sunny. It's very windy and a bit cold, isn't it? And just to remind you, Wednesdays when we go out and do a little bit more exercise. Oh, thank you. I've got now fish fingers. Thank you. Yeah, that's true. I do say fish fingers if things aren't necessarily clear. But yeah, thank you. And as I was saying, Wednesday is the day we can go out a little bit more. I think it's unlimited exercise, wasn't it? Not sure how that's going to work out in parks and football and people who want to get out and about with their friends, because it's so hard to, we can go out, but it's probably no different to what we're doing now. But maybe just a bit more unlimited. Okay. I really hope there isn't a shortage of fish fingers. Right, thanks ever so much, folks. I'm probably going to have to go and get my essential items from the shop now, including fish fingers. Enjoy the rest of the day, and if I hear anything about plans, I will send another link through and we can catch up again. It might be before Friday. If not, I will see you on Friday. Okay, folks, take care. Bye-bye.